Get down, now! Sofia Martinez threw herself over the small body of 7-year-old Marco Donato as the black SUV roared past the playground, its tinted windows hiding whatever threat lurked inside. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she pressed the boy into the wood chips beneath the slide, her arms forming a shield over his trembling frame. The vehicle's tires screeched around the corner, and for 3 agonizing seconds she waited for the sound of gunfire that never came. When she finally lifted her head, Marco's dark eyes stared up at her, wide with fear, but also something else, a terrible familiarity with danger that no child should possess. "Miss Sophia, are they gone?" His voice barely rose above a whisper. She nodded, her breath still coming in short gasps as she helped him to his feet. Her hands shook as she brushed the wood chips from his designer jacket, a ridiculous garment for a playground, but everything about Marco's life screamed excess and danger. She'd been his nanny for only 3 weeks, hired through an agency that asked surprisingly few questions and paid twice the market rate. The Donato family lived in a fortress-like brownstone in Brooklyn's most exclusive neighborhood, surrounded by men in expensive suits who never seemed to smile. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you. Now let's continue. "We need to get you home," Sophia said, gripping his hand firmly as they hurried toward her car. She glanced over her shoulder every few steps, scanning the tree-lined street for the SUV or anything else out of place. Her instincts, honed from growing up in the rough neighborhoods of the Bronx, screamed that something was very wrong. When they arrived at the Donato residence, the heavy iron gate swung open before she could press the intercom. 2 men in dark suits materialized from the shadows, their faces carved from stone. One of them, Vincent, she'd learned his name, spoke into a concealed radio as they approached. "Boss wants to see you. Now." Sophia's stomach dropped. She'd met Alessandro Donato only twice since starting, once during her interview, where his cold grey eyes had seemed to dissect every word she spoke, and once in passing when he'd returned home early from business. He was a man who commanded attention without raising his voice, whose very presence made the air feel heavier. She followed Vincent through the marble-floored foyer, past oil paintings that probably cost more than her parents' house, and into a study panelled in dark wood. Alessandro stood by the window, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. His tailored suit fit him like a second skin, and even from behind, he radiated controlled power. "I don't care what Tony says. Find out who sent that car and bring them to me." He ended the call without saying goodbye, then turned to face her. At 42, Alessandro Donato was handsome in a dangerous way. Sharp cheekbones, perfectly groomed dark hair with touches of silver at the temples, and those eyes that seemed to see through pretense. "Tell me exactly what happened." Sophia recounted every detail, keeping her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. She'd suspected from day one that Alessandro's import-export business was a front for something far less legitimate. The armed guards, the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, the way Marco never had playdates with other children. It all painted a picture she'd tried to ignore. When she finished, Alessandro studied her in silence for what felt like an eternity. "You protected my son. Of course, that's my job." "No." He moved closer and she caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker, maybe cigars, maybe danger. "Your job is to watch him during the day. Throwing yourself over him when a car drives by? That's different, that's instinct," she finished. "I have younger siblings. I've always protected them." Something flickered in his eyes, not quite warmth, but perhaps a grudging respect. "You're observant, Miss Martinez. You've figured out that my business isn't entirely legal." She met his gaze directly. "I've figured out that Marco needs someone who'll keep him safe. That's all that matters to me." "And you're not afraid?" I grew up with gang violence. I watched my cousin get shot over the wrong color bandana. Fear doesn't help anyone. She paused, then added quietly, but I won't lie, I'm afraid. For Marco, he's 7 years old, and he already knows to hit the ground when a car passes too slowly. Alessandro's jaw tightened. The world I live in has costs. My son is one of them. Then maybe you should consider, I don't need parenting advice from the help. His voice turned to ice, and Sophia immediately regretted her words, but then his expression softened marginally. However, you've proven yourself today. Your salary is doubled, effective immediately, and Vincent will be assigned to shadow you whenever you're with Marco outside the house. Mr. Donato, I don't need... This isn't negotiable. What happened today? He moved to a crystal decanter and poured himself 2 fingers of amber liquid. There are people who would hurt my son to get to me. Today was a warning. Next time, they might not just drive by. Sophia's blood ran cold. Who would hurt a child? That's not your concern. Your concern is Marco. Keep him safe, keep him happy, and don't ask questions about my business. Understood? She nodded, though every fiber of her being wanted to grab Marco and run far from this gilded cage of violence and secrets. But the truth was, she needed this job. Her father's medical bills were mounting, her mother worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on, and her younger brother's college tuition wasn't going to pay itself. The doubled salary Alessandro offered was more than just generous. It was life-changing. As she left the study, Marco appeared at the top of the grand staircase, his small face anxious. She climbed the steps and knelt beside him, forcing a smile. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Your dad just wanted to make sure we were both all right. He gets worried." Marco's voice held a wisdom beyond his years. "Ever since Mum died, he gets worried about everything." Sophia's heart clenched. The agency had mentioned Marco's mother had passed away 2 years ago, but the details were vague. "I know he does. But you know what? That just means he loves you very much." "Miss Sophia?" Marco's small hand found hers. "Will you stay? The other nannies always leave." She thought about the doubled salary, about her family's needs, about the fear in this child's eyes that no 7-year-old should carry. "I'll stay as long as you need me." "Good deal." That night, after Marco was asleep, Sophia stood in the darkened hallway outside his room, listening to his soft breathing. Through the window, she could see Vincent and another guard patrolling the grounds. She'd stepped into a world where danger lurked in expensive cars and threats came wrapped in tailored suits. But she'd also made a promise to a scared little boy who'd already lost his mother. Whatever secrets this family held, whatever darkness Alessandro Donato trafficked in, Marco deserved someone who would protect him. She just didn't know yet how much that protection would cost her, or how deep the secrets went. In the study below, Alessandro stared at security footage from the playground, replaying the moment Sophia threw herself over Marco. His wife's sister, Lucia, had been right about her. She had instincts, courage, and most importantly, she asked the right questions. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in months. "It's me. The situation with Marco is getting worse. We need to move up the timeline." "Are you sure about the nanny?" a woman's voice asked on the other end. Alessandro watched Sophia's pixelated form on the screen, her body wrapped protectively around his son. "She's the one. She doesn't know it yet, but she's the only person I trust with the truth. And when she finds out about the boy, about what we've done..." He closed his eyes, exhaustion suddenly weighing on him. "Then we pray she understands why some secrets are worth killing for and dying for." The conversation ended, and Alessandro poured another drink. Tomorrow, everything would begin to unravel. The question wasn't if Sophia would discover the truth about Marco. It was how she would react when she learned that the child she'd sworn to protect wasn't really his son at all. The following morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for October in New York. Sophia woke early, her mind still replaying yesterday's events in an endless loop. The black SUV, the fear in Marco's eyes, Alessandro's cryptic warnings, all of it pointed to a world she'd been thrust into without fully understanding the rules. She dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, preferring comfort over formality despite the Donato household's obvious wealth. When she descended to the kitchen, she found Marco already awake, sitting at the marble island with a bowl of untouched cereal, while a woman in her 50s, the housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, bustled about preparing coffee. "You're up early," Sophia said, ruffling Marco's dark hair as she passed. "Couldn't sleep." He pushed the cereal around with his spoon. "I had nightmares about the car." Sophia's heart squeezed. She pulled out the stool next to him and sat down. "Want to talk about it? In the dream, you weren't fast enough. The car, it didn't just drive by." His voice cracked and tears welled in his eyes. She pulled him into a hug, feeling his small body shake with suppressed sobs. "Hey, listen to me. I was fast enough. You're safe. Nothing happened." "But something could have." He pulled back, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Something always could. That's what Dad says. That's why we have Vincent and the others. That's why I can't go to regular school or have friends over." The loneliness in his voice cut through her. This child lived in a golden prison, surrounded by luxury, but starved for normalcy. "What if we did something fun today? Just you and me, and Vincent, I guess, but something to take your mind off yesterday." "Like what?" "Like, have you ever been to Coney Island?" Marco's eyes widened. "The amusement park? Dad says it's too dangerous." "Everything's dangerous according to your dad," she muttered, then caught herself. "But if Vincent comes with us and we're careful, maybe—" "Miss Martinez." Alessandro's voice came from the doorway, making them both jump. He stood there in a charcoal suit, his hair still damp from a shower, looking every inch the powerful businessman he pretended to be. "A word, in private." Sophia followed him to the study, her pulse quickening. She'd overstepped, criticized his parenting within earshot. But when he closed the door behind them, his expression wasn't angry, it was weary. "Coney Island is too exposed," he said, moving to the window. "But you're right. Marco needs normalcy, something I can't give him." "Mr. Donato, Alessandro, if you're going to risk your life protecting my son, we can dispense with formalities." He turned to face her. "I need to tell you something that will help you understand why yesterday happened and why it will likely happen again." Sophia's mouth went dry. She'd sensed this moment coming, the moment when the careful fiction of Alessandro Donato, import-export businessman, would crack open to reveal the truth beneath. 5 years ago, I made an enemy. Not just any enemy. A man named Sal Russo, who runs everything on the South Side. We were partners once, then competitors, then— He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Then one of his men killed my wife." "I'm sorry," Sophia whispered, though she'd suspected something similar. "It was supposed to be me in that car. Maria was just collateral damage." The pain in his voice was raw, real. "Since then, Russo and I have been at war. A quiet war, mostly. Business disruptions, intimidation, the occasional disappearance, but lately he's gotten bolder. Yesterday's car was his way of telling me he knows my weakness." Marco, Alessandro confirmed. "Which is why I need someone I can trust absolutely, someone who'll put his safety above everything else, including their own life." His grey eyes pinned her. "Yesterday proved you're that person. But before this goes any further, you need to understand what you're agreeing to. This isn't just a nanny job anymore, Sophia. This is choosing a side in a war. She should have run, should have quit on the spot, collected her final paycheck, and returned to her safe, uncomplicated life in the Bronx. But she thought of Marco's nightmares, his loneliness, the way he'd asked if she would stay. What exactly are you asking me? I'm asking you to be more than his nanny. I'm asking you to be his guardian, his protector, his connection to a normal life. And in exchange, I'll pay you whatever you need, your father's medical bills, your brother's tuition, anything. He moved closer. But I need total loyalty. No questions about my business, no contact with authorities, no moral judgments about how I make my money. And if I say no, then I'll pay you generously for your time, provide excellent references, and find someone else. But Sophia... His hand touched her shoulder, the gesture surprisingly gentle. I don't think you will say no, because you've already bonded with my son. You've already made him promises. And I don't think you're the type to break promises to children. He was right, damn him. She'd already lost her heart to that lonely little boy who knew too much about danger and too little about joy. I want full transparency about threats, she said finally. If someone's coming after Marco, I need to know. I can't protect him blind. Alessandro considered this, then nodded slowly. Agreed. But Sophia, once you know these things, there's no going back. You'll be complicit. You'll be part of this world. Then I guess I'd better learn the rules fast. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. Welcome to the family, Miss Martinez. God help us both. As Sophia left the study to return to Marco, she felt the weight of her decision settling over her shoulders like a heavy cloak. She'd crossed a line today, from employee to accomplice, from outsider to insider. What she didn't know yet was that the secret at the heart of the Donato family was far darker than mob rivalry or business wars. The truth about who Marco really was and why Sal Russo wanted him dead would force her to question everything she thought she knew about loyalty, family, and the lines between right and wrong. But for now, she had a promise to keep. She found Marco still in the kitchen, hope lighting his face when he saw her. So, she said with a smile that felt only slightly forced, about that trip to Coney Island. His whoop of joy echoed through the brownstone, and for a moment the shadows seemed to recede, just for a moment. 3 weeks passed in a strange, new normal. Sophia moved into the brownstone's guest suite, a space more luxurious than anywhere she'd ever lived. Her mornings began with Marco, breakfast, lessons with his private tutor, carefully supervised outdoor time. Her afternoons were filled with activities designed to give him slivers of childhood. Baking cookies in the massive kitchen, movie nights in the home theater, art projects that covered the playroom floor in glitter and paint. Vincent became a constant presence. Shadow and bodyguard rolled into one. He was surprisingly good with Marco, teaching the boy card tricks and telling edited versions of stories from his own childhood. Sophia learned that Vincent had worked for Alessandro for 15 years, since before Marco was born, and his loyalty was absolute. But it was the evenings that troubled her. After Marco went to bed, she'd hear Alessandro's voice drifting from the study. Tense phone conversations, meetings with men who arrived through the back entrance, the occasional sound of something breaking in frustration. Twice, he returned home after midnight with blood on his knuckles and murder in his eyes, though he always cleaned up before Marco saw him in the morning. She was learning the rhythms of this dangerous world. The coded language, the way certain names made everyone tense, the difference between regular security checks and actual threats. And she was learning about Alessandro himself, not the mob boss, but the father who read Marco's stories in Italian, the widower who kept his late wife's photo on his desk, the man who sometimes looked at his son with such profound sadness that Sophia had to look away. One evening in late October, everything changed. Sophia was in the playroom with Marco, building an elaborate Lego city, when Alessandro appeared in the doorway. "Marco, go ask Mrs. Chen for cookies. I need to speak with Miss Sophia." Something in his tone made Marco hurry away without his usual protests. When they were alone, Alessandro moved to the window, his shoulders tense beneath his expensive shirt. "Russo knows," he said without preamble. "Knows what? Everything. About Marco. About the truth." He turned to face her, and she was shocked to see fear. Actual, raw fear in his eyes. "We're out of time. I need to tell you now before someone else does." Sophia's heart began to race. "Tell me what?" Alessandro took a breath, as if preparing to leap off a cliff. "Marco isn't my biological son." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sophia sank onto the couch, her mind reeling. "What? But he looks just like you. Everyone says. Everyone sees what they expect to see. The truth is—" He moved to the desk, pulled out a leather-bound photo album, and handed it to her. "The truth is that Marco is Sal Russo's grandson." Sophia stared at the photo he pointed to, a young woman with Marco's same dark eyes and delicate features, her arm around Alessandro's late wife Maria. "Who is this?" "Natalia Russo, Sal's daughter. She and Maria were best friends since childhood, like sisters." Alessandro's voice grew thick with emotion. 7 years ago, Natalia got pregnant. The father was some kid Sal disapproved of, so Sal arranged for the boy to disappear. Literally. Natalia was devastated, terrified. She came to Maria for help, and Maria helped her escape. More than that, when Natalia died in childbirth, Maria and I— He paused, struggling with the words. "We took the baby. Sal didn't know Natalia had even had the child. She'd gone into hiding the last few months. As far as Sal knew, his daughter died before giving birth, and the bloodline ended with her." Sophia's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. "So you raised Russo's grandson as your own son. For 7 years, he's had no idea his grandchild survived. Until 3 months ago, when someone in my organization betrayed me. Someone told Russo the truth, that Marco is actually his grandson, Natalia's son, that we've been hiding him all these years. Oh my God." Sophia covered her mouth with her hand. "That's why the attacks increased. That's why the SUV drove by the playground. Russo wants him back." "Russo wants revenge," Alessandro corrected grimly. "He blames me for Natalia's death, for hiding his grandson, for everything. And now he knows the truth, that the child I've raised and loved for 7 years isn't mine by blood, but his. Does Marco know? No. And I need him not to know. Not yet. Not while—" Alessandro's voice broke. "He's my son. Blood or not, he's my son. I've changed his diapers, taught him to walk, held him when he cried for his mother. Maria loved him like he was ours. And now Russo wants to take him, raise him in his world, turn him into a monster like himself." Sophia finished quietly. "I won't let that happen. I'll burn this city to the ground before I let Russo take my son." The venom in Alessandro's voice was absolute. "But I need you to understand the stakes now. This isn't just mob warfare anymore. This is about a grandfather who wants his heir, and a father who won't give up his child. And you, Sophia, you're caught in the middle." She thought of Marco's innocent smile, his loneliness, the way he called her Miss Sophia with such trust. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because tomorrow Russo is demanding a meeting, a sit-down, neutral ground, witnesses from 5 families. He's going to offer me a deal." Alessandro's hands clenched into fists. "He wants Marco in exchange for peace. Give up my son, and the war ends. Everyone goes back to business as usual. You're not actually considering—" "Of course not!" His shout echoed off the walls. "But when I refuse, when I tell him he'll never get Marco, things are going to escalate. Fast, and I need you to be ready to run. Run where? I've arranged a safe house upstate, remote, heavily guarded, off the grid. If things go wrong tomorrow, and they probably will, Vincent will get you and Marco out of the city. You'll stay there until this is resolved. Resolved how? Alessandro's expression turned to stone. Until either Russo is dead, or I am. The weight of it all crashed over Sofia like a wave. She'd signed up to protect a mobster's son, not to become a fugitive, harboring a stolen grandchild in a blood feud that could end with everyone dead. But then she thought of Marco asking if she would stay, of his nightmares, of the way he'd finally started to laugh and play like a normal child. "I'll do it," she said quietly. "I'll keep him safe, whatever it takes." Alessandro crossed the room and took her hands in his. "You're either very brave or very stupid, Miss Martinez. Probably both." She met his eyes. "But I meant what I said weeks ago. Marco deserves protection. He deserves a chance at a normal life. And if that means running from a psychotic grandfather who sees him as property, then that's what we'll do. Thank you." The words seemed foreign in his mouth, as if Alessandro Donato rarely expressed gratitude. "When this is over, when Marco is truly safe, I'll make sure you're taken care of for life." "I don't want your money," Sofia said, surprising herself. "I just want that little boy to survive this, all of it." "Then pray tomorrow goes better than I expect, because if it doesn't—" He released her hands and moved toward the door. "Pack a bag tonight. Nothing traceable, nothing obvious. Be ready to leave at a moment's notice." After he left, Sofia sat in the darkened playroom, surrounded by Lego towers and toy cars, trying to process everything she'd learned. Marco wasn't Alessandro's son. He was the grandchild of the man trying to kill them all. He was the center of a war he didn't even know he was fighting, and she just promised to become his shield against the worst of it. Marco appeared in the doorway, chocolate cookie crumbs on his face. "Miss Sofia? Why do you look sad?" She forced a smile and opened her arms. He ran to her, burrowing into her embrace with the trust only children possess, the belief that adults will always keep them safe, no matter what monsters lurk in the darkness. "I'm not sad, sweetheart, just thinking." "About what?" "About how lucky I am to know you." He hugged her tighter. "I'm lucky too. You're the best nanny ever." If only he knew what his nanny was, really. A woman caught between two mob bosses, protecting a child who was both pawn and prize, in a game where everyone played for keeps. Tomorrow, Alessandro would face Sal Russo and refuse to give up the child he'd raised as his son. And when he did, the already dangerous world Sofia had entered would explode into open warfare. She just hoped they'd all survive what came next. The morning of the meeting arrived grey and cold, November creeping in with that particular New York dampness that seeped into bones. Alessandro left the brownstone at dawn, his face carved from granite, wearing his most expensive suit like armor. Vincent and 3 other men followed in a separate car, guns hidden beneath tailored jackets. Sofia watched from Marco's bedroom window as the convoy pulled away, her stomach knotted with dread. She'd barely slept, had spent half the night packing 2 small bags, one for her, one for Marco, with only essentials. Her phone held a single burner number programmed in, Vincent's emergency line. "Where's Dad going?" Marco asked from his bed, voice thick with sleep. "Business meeting, he'll be back soon." The lie tasted bitter, but what else could she say? Your biological grandfather wants to kidnap you, and your adoptive father is about to go to war to stop him. They went through their morning routine mechanically. Breakfast, lessons, a puzzle in the playroom. But Sofia couldn't focus, couldn't stop checking her phone every few minutes. Mrs. Chen moved through the house like a ghost, her usual chatter replaced by tight-lipped silence. Even Marco sensed the tension, growing quieter as the hours dragged on. At 11:30, Sophia's phone buzzed. Vincent's text was brief. "Now, back door." Her heart lurched. "Marco, we need to go, right now." "Go where?" "What about Dad?" "Your dad wants us to take a trip. It's okay, baby, but we need to move fast." She grabbed his hand and the two packed bags, racing for the back stairs. Her mind screamed questions. What happened at the meeting? Was Alessandro alive? Had Russo attacked? But there was no time for answers. Vincent waited by the service entrance, face grim, blood on his collar. "Cars running. Don't ask questions, just move." They piled into a nondescript sedan, Vincent at the wheel, another guard Sophia didn't recognize in the passenger seat. As they pulled away from the brownstone, she looked back to see 3 black SUVs screech to a halt out front. "Go, go, go!" Vincent floored it, and they shot through the alley, tires squealing. Behind them, one of the SUVs gave chase. "What happened?" Sophia demanded, her arms wrapped around Marco, who'd begun to cry. Meeting went south. Russo tried to take the boss by force. Boss fought back, escaped but barely. Russo's men are hitting all our properties, looking for the kid. Vincent took a corner at 50 miles per hour, and Sophia grabbed the door handle to keep from being thrown. "We've got maybe 20 minutes before they figure out where we're going." "I want my dad," Marco sobbed. "Your dad is safe, buddy. He's leading them away from you. That's the plan." Vincent caught Sophia's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Boss said to tell you, trust no one but me. Got it?" She nodded, her throat too tight for words. They drove north on back roads, avoiding highways and cameras. The pursuing SUV fell away after 10 minutes, lost in the maze of Queens streets. But Vincent didn't slow down, didn't stop, didn't even pause for red lights when he could blow through them safely. 2 hours later, they pulled up to a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, dense woods on all sides, a long gravel drive, no neighbors for miles. It looked abandoned, but when Vincent knocked in a specific pattern, the door swung open to reveal a woman in her 60s with steel-grey hair and a shotgun. "Lucia," Vincent said with clear relief. "Thank God." The woman lowered her weapon and fixed Sophia with an assessing stare. "So you're the nanny Alessandro can't shut up about. Get inside." "You too, Marco. Aunt Lucia's got cookies." Marco's tear-stained face showed confusion. "Aunt Lucia? I don't know you." "Your mama's sister," Lucia said gently. "I've been gone a long time, baby boy, but I'm here now. Come on." Inside, the farmhouse was warmer than Sophia expected. A fire crackling in the stone fireplace, comfortable furniture, modern security equipment disguised among the rustic decor. Lucia moved with military precision, checking locks and arming systems, while Vincent made calls from a satellite phone. "Situation?" Lucia demanded when Vincent hung up. "Bad. Russo declared war. He's got half the commission backing him, says Alessandro kidnapped his grandson and has been holding him hostage for 7 years, making Alessandro look like the villain." Vincent's jaw clenched. "Boss is hiding in Brooklyn. Got maybe 10 loyal guys with him. Everyone else scattered or switched sides." "Cowards," Lucia spat. "What's the play? Survive, regroup, wait for Russo to overreach." Vincent glanced at Marco, who'd curled up on the couch with Sophia. "Keep the kids safe above all else. Boss's orders." Sophia held Marco closer, feeling him tremble against her. She didn't understand half of what they were saying, the commission, switching sides, declarations of war, but she understood the core truth. They were now fugitives, hiding from a man who would stop at nothing to reclaim his grandson. "Marco," Lucia said gently, bringing over a tray of cookies and milk, "I need to explain some things to you. Grown-up things. But you're a smart boy, and you deserve to know the truth." "No," Sophia interrupted. He doesn't need to know. Not yet. He's 7 years old, and he's Sal Russo's grandson. Lucia cut her off, which means men with guns are hunting him right now. He needs to understand why, needs to know who to trust. Her expression softened. I loved your mama, Marco. She was my little sister, and when she died, I thought I'd lost everything. But then Alessandro showed me a picture of you, and I saw Natalia looking back at me. Marco's confusion deepened. Who's Natalia? Your birth mother. The woman who gave you life before she lost her own. Lucia sat beside him, her weathered hand covering his small one. Alessandro isn't your biological father, sweetheart, but he's raised you, loved you, protected you since you were hours old. He's your father in every way that matters. The words hung in the air. Marco looked from Lucia to Sophia to Vincent, his 7-year-old mind struggling to process information that would devastate most adults. Then who? His voice broke. Who's my real dad? Gone, baby. Dead before you were born. Lucia's voice was gentle but firm. But your grandfather, your biological grandfather, he just found out about you, and he wants to take you away from Alessandro, raise you himself. Is that the bad man? The one who wants to hurt us? Yes, Sal Russo, and he's very powerful, very dangerous. That's why we're here, why we're hiding. Because Alessandro, your dad, loves you too much to let Russo turn you into something dark. Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't want a new dad. I want my real dad. I want Alessandro. I know, baby. Lucia pulled him into a hug. And we're going to make sure you get back to him. But right now, we need to be smart. Can you do that? Can you be brave for your dad? Marco nodded against her shoulder, and Sophia felt her heart shatter. This child, this innocent, sweet child, was now fully aware of the nightmare his life had become. The protective bubble she'd tried to maintain had burst, and there was no going back. That night, after Marco finally cried himself to sleep, Sophia stood on the farmhouse porch, wrapped in a borrowed jacket, staring at the stars. She heard the door open behind her, felt Lucia's presence. "You're angry," Lucia observed. "He didn't need to know. Not like that. Not so soon." "Yes, he did. Because if something happens, if Russo's men find us, Marco needs to know who the enemy is. Ignorance doesn't protect children. It just makes them easy targets." Lucia lit a cigarette, the ember glowing in the darkness. "You care about him." "Of course I care about him." "No, I mean you really care, like he's yours." Lucia studied her. "Alessandro saw that in you from the beginning, said you looked at Marco the way his mother did, like he hung the moon." Sophia's eyes burned with unshed tears. "This is insane, all of it. That little boy should be worried about homework and video games, not mob wars and kidnapping plots. Should be, yes, but the world doesn't care about should be. It only cares about what is." Lucia took a drag on her cigarette. "Maria, Alessandro's wife, my sister, she knew this day would come. Before she died, she made me promise to help protect Marco if the truth ever came out. That's why I disappeared, why I've been off the grid for 2 years, building this place, preparing for the worst. Did Maria know what keeping Marco would cost, that it would start a war? She knew, and she did it anyway, because she loved that baby more than her own life, just like Alessandro does, just like I think you're starting to." Lucia flicked ash over the porch rail. "Question is, are you willing to pay the price that kind of love demands?" Sophia thought of Marco's tear-stained face, his small voice asking for his real dad, his trust that she would keep him safe. "I don't have a choice anymore. I'm already in too deep." "Good, because we're about to go deeper." The next 2 weeks became a surreal blur of waiting and watching. Vincent came and went, bringing supplies and news from the outside world. Alessandro was alive but barely, hiding in a series of safe houses, his organization in shambles as men chose sides between him and Russo. Russo controlled more territory each day, using his commission backing to squeeze Alessandro's operations, turn his allies, freeze his accounts. But Alessandro refused to negotiate, refused to even discuss giving up Marco. And that defiance, that absolute loyalty to a child who wasn't his blood, began to shift public opinion, at least within certain circles of the underworld. "There's honor in it," Vincent reported one evening. "Old-school guys are starting to question Russo's play. You don't go after a man's son, blood or not. It crosses a line." "Will it be enough?" Sophia asked. Vincent's expression was grim. "Depends on whether Alessandro survives long enough for it to matter." Marco adapted with a resilience that broke Sophia's heart. He helped Lucia cook, learned to stack firewood, made friends with the stray dog that wandered onto the property. But at night, he had nightmares, dreams where men in black suits dragged him away while Alessandro screamed. Sophia held him through those dark hours, singing lullabies her mother had sung to her, promising safety she wasn't sure she could deliver. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after they'd fled the brownstone. Vincent's satellite phone rang, and from his expression, Sophia knew immediately that something had changed. "It's the boss. He wants to talk to you." Vincent handed her the phone. "Alessandro?" Her voice cracked on his name. "Sophia, is Marco okay?" He sounded exhausted, his voice hoarse. "He's fine, scared, confused, but safe. We're all safe." "Good, that's good." A long pause. "Listen, I don't have much time. Russo offered new terms. A meeting. Just him and me, with neutral arbiters. Winner takes Marco." "Winner? What does that mean?" "Exactly what it sounds like. A duel, essentially. Old school. He wins, Marco goes to him. I win, this ends, and Marco stays with me." His voice dropped. "I'm taking the deal." "No!" "Alessandro, you can't." "I can and I will, because it's the only way this ends without half the city burning and Marco caught in the crossfire." She heard the steel beneath his exhaustion. "I'm calling because I need you to promise me something. If I lose—" "Don't say that. If I lose, you take Marco and run. Lucia has passports, money, contacts. You get him out of the country, raise him far from this world. Can you do that?" Sophia's vision blurred with tears. "Yes, and tell him." Alessandro's voice broke. "Tell him his father loved him, that everything I did was for him, that he's the best thing that ever happened to me. Blood be damned." "You can tell him yourself when you win." "I hope you're right." A commotion in the background. "I have to go. The meeting's in 3 hours. Stay safe, Sophia, and thank you for everything." The line went dead. Sophia stood frozen, phone in her trembling hand, as the full weight of what was about to happen crashed over her. Alessandro was walking into what amounted to a sanctioned murder, putting his life on the line for a child who wasn't even biologically his. "Vincent," she said shakily, "if Alessandro loses, how long do we have before Russo comes for Marco?" "Hours, maybe less." Vincent checked his weapons with mechanical precision. "Lucia and I have an exit strategy. We'll get the kid out, don't worry." "But Alessandro is doing what fathers do. He's protecting his son the only way he knows how." Vincent's eyes met hers. "All we can do now is pray and be ready to run like hell if it goes wrong." The next 3 hours were the longest of Sophia's life. She tried to act normal for Marco's sake, playing board games and making lunch. But her mind was miles away in whatever neutral location Alessandro and Russo had chosen for their showdown. When Vincent's phone finally rang, her heart stopped. He answered, listened, then slowly lowered the phone. His expression was unreadable. "Well?" Sophia demanded. "Boss is alive, Russo isn't." Vincent's lips curved into the first smile she'd seen from him in weeks. It's over. Alessandro won. The relief hit her like a physical blow. She sank into the nearest chair, hands shaking, tears streaming down her face. Marco ran to her, frightened by her reaction. "Miss Sophia, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, baby. Everything's okay now. Your dad." She pulled him into a fierce hug. "Your dad is coming home." 2 days later, Alessandro arrived at the farmhouse looking like he'd aged a decade. His right arm was in a sling, bruises colored his jaw, and exhaustion lined every feature. But when Marco saw him pull up, the boy let out a cry of pure joy and ran outside. Alessandro dropped to his knees, his good arm wrapping around his son, his face buried in Marco's hair. Sophia watched from the porch as father and son held each other, both crying, both whole, both alive. When they finally pulled apart, Marco looked up at Alessandro with those two knowing eyes. "Aunt Lucia told me the truth. About my birth mom and Russo and everything." Alessandro's expression flickered with pain. "I'm sorry you had to find out that way. I wanted to tell you when you were older, when... Are you still my dad? Always. Forever. Nothing changes that." "Good." And Marco threw his arms around Alessandro again. "Because I only want you, nobody else." Later, after Marco had gone to bed, Sophia found Alessandro on the porch where she'd stood so many nights worrying about this exact moment. His arm might have been injured, but he'd survived. They'd all survived. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for keeping him safe, for keeping your promise." How did it end? With Russo? Violently, quickly. And with witnesses from 5 families who all agreed that Russo crossed lines that shouldn't be crossed. Taking another man's son, blood or not, violates every code we live by. Alessandro's jaw clenched. "The commission ruled in my favor. Russo's territory is being divided up, his organization dissolved, it's done. And Marco is mine. Legally, officially, no one left to challenge it." He turned to look at her, his grey eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. "But I couldn't have gotten here without you. You risked everything, your safety, your family, your life, for a child you barely knew." "I know him now," Sophia said simply, "and he deserves everything we did to protect him." Alessandro was quiet for a moment. "When this started, I offered you money, a salary, bonuses, whatever you needed. But I think we both know this stopped being about money a long time ago." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying Marco needs you. Not as an employee, but as..." He struggled with the words. "As family, as the mother he lost when Maria died. And I..." He took a breath. "I'm asking you to stay. Not as his nanny, but as his guardian. His mom, if you're willing." Sophia's breath caught. "Alessandro, I know it's fast. I know the circumstances are insane, but these last few weeks, hiding and fighting and nearly losing everything taught me something. Life is too short and too dangerous to waste on pretense. Marco loves you. I trust you with him completely, and if there's any chance you feel the same." She thought about it for exactly 2 seconds, about the little boy who'd stolen her heart, about the man who'd fought a war to keep his son, about the strange, dangerous, impossible family they'd somehow become. "Yes," she said, "I'll stay." 6 months later, life had settled into something that almost resembled normal. Marco attended a private school under heavy but discreet security. Sophia had legally adopted him with Alessandro's blessing, making her his mother in every sense that mattered. The brownstone felt less like a fortress and more like a home, filled with Marco's laughter and the warmth of people who'd been through hell together and come out stronger. Alessandro's business remained what it was, grey at best, criminal at worst, but he'd become more careful, more calculated. The war with Russo had shown him the cost of exposure, and he'd begun slowly legitimizing parts of his operation. It would take years, maybe decades, But Marco deserved a father who might actually see him graduate college without being in prison or dead. One evening, as Sophia tucked Marco into bed, he looked up at her with those dark eyes, so like his birth mother's. "Miss Sophia, I mean, Mom." She'd told him he could call her whatever felt right. Sometimes it was Miss Sophia, sometimes Sophia, sometimes, like now, Mom. Each variation made her heart swell. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you happy here with us?" She brushed his hair back from his forehead. "Happier than I ever thought possible." "Why?" "Because Dad asked me if I'd be okay if he asked you to marry him, and I said yes because I want us to be a real family, but only if you want to." Sophia's heart stuttered. She thought of Alessandro downstairs, the man who'd become so much more than an employer or ally. Thought of the life they were building together, strange and complicated but real. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you're already part of our family, so it doesn't really matter, but he wants to make it official. He says you deserve that." She smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "And what do you think?" "I think you saved my life and Dad's life and made us happy again when everything was scary. So yeah, I think you should marry him." Marco yawned, sleep tugging at him. "Besides, then you'd be stuck with us forever, and Dad says that's what family means." "Smart man, your father, the smartest." Marco's eyes drifted closed. "Love you, Mom." "Love you too, baby, always." She found Alessandro in his study, the room where so many of their pivotal conversations had taken place. He looked up from his paperwork, saw her expression, and stood. "Marco told you," he said. "He did." "And?" Sophia crossed the room and took his hands in hers. "Ask me." Alessandro's smile was soft, genuine, the smile of a man who'd found something worth more than power or money or territory. "Sophia Martinez, will you marry me? Will you be my partner, Marco's mother, and the person I trust above all others for whatever time we have left?" "Yes, to all of it." When they kissed, it felt like the end of one story and the beginning of another, one where a nanny had saved a mobster's son and discovered that family wasn't about blood or law or rules. It was about the people you'd risk everything to protect, the loves you'd go to war for, the promises you kept even when the world tried to break you. Upstairs, Marco slept peacefully, no nightmares haunting his dreams. In the morning, they'd make breakfast together, father, mother and son, in the brownstone that had once been a prison, but had become a home. The secret that had changed Sophia's life forever wasn't just that Marco was Russo's grandson, or that Alessandro had raised another man's child. The real secret, the one that mattered most, was simpler. Love doesn't come from blood. It comes from the choice to stay when running would be easier, to fight when surrender beckons, and to build a family from the broken pieces of what could have been a tragedy. Sophia Martinez had walked into the Donato household expecting just a job. She'd found her purpose, her family, and her home, and she'd never looked back.